Welcome back, everyone. This is Tom from Cerulean Bay, and Tropical Escapes at Home has got a great topic for you today. We are getting into lighting, and lighting is obviously something that's super important. And it's so important that we're actually going to be doing a part one today, talking about interior lighting. And then next week, we'll go ahead and cover exterior lighting because there's a whole lot there too. So you wouldn't think at first glance that there's a whole lot to talk about when it comes to lighting, but actually there is. And we're going to get into some really great ideas about how you can illuminate every corner of your house to really give it that tropical feel, make it look like the tropics. We are going to get into some inspiration for interior lighting, which includes living rooms, dining rooms, bedrooms, kitchens, bathrooms, really any room you want in your house. And we will break that down by getting into ambient lighting, and then there is task lighting and also accent lighting. And these can come from a real variety of sources, such as floor lamps, desk lamps, table lamps, pendants, chandeliers, uplighting, track lighting. We're going to cover it all. And we are going to also get into the basic principles of lighting. And believe me, it is not a total snooze. It's actually quite interesting when you get into it so that you can better understand how to easily pick the right light fixtures and the right bulbs, because there's a whole little bit of science that we'll get into in there about how to make all of this match your tropical home decor. And also your lighting preferences. You might not really think you have lighting preferences, but once we get into these details, you're going to go, oh, yeah, some of that is actually pretty cool. And some of that is not so cool. And I don't want it. So we will take a look at that. If you are really looking to create that truly relaxing and dreamy tropical oasis at home, then you actually need to get on a mission to find the perfect lighting, because there's a ton of it out there online, or you go to your favorite home improvement store, lighting store, places like Walmart or Target. Lighting is everywhere, and they are not all the same. So you want the right ones that are going to bring in that right level of warmth, that right level of coziness that really reminds you, if you've traveled in the past, or if you imagine you have that perfect tropical retreat in your head, it really takes you to that secluded faraway island escape. So that's what we're all about creating here. And in this episode and the next one, we're going to do just that. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to do a bit of imagining here, like we like to do here at Cerulean Bakes. It's all about imagination and then how to bring that to life. But if you can just imagine for a moment the most beautiful tropical islands, which are known for their serene ambience and their gorgeous, luxurious beaches, these are places that are filled with all of those natural textures, beautiful natural colors. These can be any tropical place, from the beaches of Mexico to the Seychelles in the Indian Ocean to Bora Bora in the Tahitian Islands in the South Pacific, or even over to Bali over in Indonesia. Maybe some really cool islands you've seen or read about in the Philippines. So just all of those have their own unique types of inspiration. All of it can be brought into home decorating to create your perfect tropical resort. When you imagine a place like that, or you're looking online at pictures, there's going to be things that you love the most about it and things you love the least. If you've traveled and visited any really cool places like that, it's the same thing. There's going to be the things you really loved about it and the things that were nice, but maybe not quite so important. And sometimes it's just the way that that whole scene comes together that you're obviously enjoying for your week-long trip that you're there, or 2 weeks if you're so lucky to have 2 weeks in paradise. But if somebody were to ask you to try and identify exactly what is it about this scene that you love so much, what is it that has such a profound effect on people who truly love the tropics and who just crave these places and you just want to visit them time and time again, sometimes it can be kind of hard to put your finger on it. And when it just comes to that whole thing, that whole ambience, a lot of times that is heavily influenced on the lighting that's actually going on at the moment. Whether you are somewhere out in the middle of the day, you're somewhere on the hotel or resort property, or you're out at the beach, Maybe it's at night and you're on the property out by the pool or some really cool open air restaurant or just something. Each is obviously going to have its specifics about what makes it so freaking awesome. But if you really think about it, it's going to be the lighting that casts its spell, at the risk of sounding too dramatic here. But it is. It's the different kinds of natural lighting and then whatever basically artificial lighting that the resorts use in the form of different fixtures and bulbs and how they're placed. All of that creates that ambience. It adds to the landscaping. It adds to the beach. It just adds to the whole thing. So going back to imagining here a bit, imagine what it is you love the most about it. These are the things that in all of our blog posts and podcast episodes, we are helping you to bring into your home in terms of decor and artwork. But when you get into lighting, it really is important to understand why lighting is so important. It just is one of those things. I think it's probably the most vital element of both interior and exterior design. Lighting dramatically impacts functionality, how you can use a space. It impacts spatial perception. So, is a place looking small and cozy, or is it big and open and perfect for parties and lots of people? It really sets the mood, the overall tone of the space. And just as an example, if you take your most favorite hangout in your house, whichever room that happens to be, and then just change out all the lighting in it and imagine going really, really dim or maybe going super bright and maybe removing your favorite light fixture, whether it's on the ceiling or it's on a tabletop, and replacing it with something completely different. You can just imagine how it's going to change the overall look and feel of the room. So just remember with lighting, it sets the mood. Cool, bright lights will create a stimulating effect. They're very good in productive settings, while warmer lights are used in cozier, more intimate settings. They're good for areas of relaxation. Lighting also improves the functionality of the space, as we've mentioned, and that does include the ambient lighting, task lighting, accent lighting. What are you using the room for? What is this space going to be used for? It does change the perception of space and color. So certain lighting will make the colors on your wall and your upholstery just look different. So you want to make sure you're working with lighting that plays to those things correctly so that the whole room is the tropical scene, your tropical escape that you want. The proper lighting will add height to a room. It can add depth. Different lighting will make spaces look smaller or larger. And if you really get into the details, whatever shadowing you have in there from maybe floor plants or different pieces of furnishings that you have in there. Maybe if you have any real textural art pieces on the wall, you can manipulate the shadows. You can use lighting to downplay these things or further highlight them. Highlighting specific areas is really, really cool. And we'll get into that in a little bit here. But you can change the perception of a room depending on how your lighting is placed and what kind you have. And you can use it simply to soften an existing color palette if you've got a lot of bold colors in there and you need to tone it down, or you brighten it up. So that perception that lighting creates is super, super important. And you can also spice up the visuals, as we like to say. This is where you literally use lighting as a decorative element. It adds character. Uplighting is really good for this. That's where you can really showcase a corner in a room or a particular piece of artwork or maybe that cool floor plant. You can also use lighting to highlight any prominent features in your space. If you've got really, really cool architectural details or just like a really cool niche or maybe a particular angle of a ceiling, you can use lighting placement in there just to create its own little show, its own wow factor. So yeah, don't discount lighting. A lot of people overlook lighting and it's just you turn on the light and when you're done in the room, you turn it off. But no, lighting is its own form of art. It's its own medium. It's almost in a way like paint is. You can just do so much with it in a room. And just remember also that lighting, it really does impact people. It impacts you. It's going to impact your guests, the rest of your family, whoever might be using the room. If you think about it, Lighting is probably the biggest external factor that affects your mind, your body, and consider this with darkness too. So you've got the light and you've got the darkness. These, they definitely do affect mind and body. They obviously affect your inner clock. These are things which help control when you sleep, your appetite, your level of alertness. It's one of the reasons why jet lag is an issue for people who travel. When you're ready to go to bed and it's 12 noon outside, it can be a little rough, or you're wide awake at 2 in the morning wondering where the sun is. It's all light. So what you want to do is just really pay attention to what light fixtures you're going to choose, where they're going to be placed, desired levels of brightness. You don't want to disrupt your body's inner rhythm, especially if you're trying to create a place where you are really going to relax, maybe doing some meditation, just hanging out in your own quiet zone. Lighting is super important, probably more important than you realize. So, to achieve this, we're going to get into some different lighting types. If you think about tropical design and tropical styling and all of this, that's obviously all about vibrant colors, natural materials. This is where you're using things like exotic woods and rattan and bamboo, stone pieces in your room. You're going to have maybe artwork or upholstery with exotic birds, tropical fish. You've got the whole palm thing going on, a lot of banana leaves, big leaf plants. For textures, you are going to have your wicker pieces, maybe some seashells, pieces of sea glass, pieces of coral. All of this will come together so that you can then apply the lighting to it so that beautiful pieces are highlighted, shadowing is created. You can then create a particular space in that room for your relaxation, for meditation. And so, where we really have people start with all of this is taking a look at the space. If you already have your tropical escape and now you're just trying to really do something with the lighting, or if you're starting from scratch and you're just starting to build it out, what do you currently love about the lighting? Do you have a lot of natural light? If not, and you're using a lot of artificial light, do you love it? Is it already what you want? Or what don't you like about it? What needs to be improved so that you can really highlight your tropical furnishings and your decor? You really want your lighting to help you create that really cohesive and pulled together look when you're done. So I think what'll help with this is where we get into those three lighting types that I mentioned, and we're going to just kick off here with ambient lighting. So just know that ambient lighting is generally known as general lighting. It's kind of like the most basic form of lighting that you can use for general illumination. It is going to be the overhead fixture in the ceiling. It's going to be maybe a set of wall sconces. It's the one that's going to provide the most basic form of light. It many times will light your entire space without any particular contrasting or highlight. There's no real shadows to it. Maybe it is only a single fixture. Maybe it's two fixtures that are used in the room. Some other examples, this is where you've got chandeliers in a dining room, pendant lighting, maybe over a dining room table or in the kitchen, recessed lighting, as I mentioned, wall sconces. These are the fixtures. All of these are really the ones that wash the walls. They wash the ceiling in light. And we think every room should have at least one primary fixture for ambient lighting. Whether or not you're going to use it or not, it should still at least be there. And, for most people, that's going to be your standard overhead light fixture. But as we said, even if it's off and you never use it, you do want some brighter lighting available for maybe something that's off and you're not quite sure what's off. Turn on that big overhead light and maybe you'll be able to find the issue there and say, oh, it's that piece over there. Or, oh, you know what, that piece of wall art, it's just kind of creating a look over on that wall that I really don't like or something. We also recommend ambient lighting just for cleaning when it comes time to dusting and vacuuming. You want everything to be visible so that you can properly clean a room. It's also useful for rearranging. If you're just going to rearrange your whole scene in there, you want to be able to turn on the light because many times tropical spaces tend to be dimly lit. You use a lot of lighting that's kind of off to the sides or parked behind certain things to create that dim, intimate look. But ambient lighting is important. You need to be able to have it shine when it needs to shine. And for any other need, maybe that I haven't mentioned here, Don't eliminate your access to ambient lighting by like removing fixtures and not having anything there when you really might need it. Moving on, if you do have ambient lighting and you really want to use it as part of your tropical space, then this is where you can get into some really, really cool statement pieces. If you've got that boring overhead fixture, or maybe it's just your usual boring ceiling fan or something, this is where you can put in a cool rattan pendant or something with a really cool, unique woven pattern, because with ambient lighting, since it is such a primary lighting source, you're going to get a really cool shadow effect cast with that across the room. Or if you want to keep going with a ceiling fan, this is where you can look for something that's really tropical inspired. Maybe it's got some really cool palm shaped blades on there, like the palm fronds or something. But you can use these to create a really striking detail in your room. And you can really create some really cool tropical inspired designs with that just by getting a really cool overhead pendant or, getting online and shopping around. So again, if you want to keep that ambient lighting in there, go tropical with it. Moving on to the second form of lighting here is task lighting. And this is where, if you compare it to ambient lighting, sometimes that's not enough for performing specific tasks like reading or writing. Maybe you're into crafting, or in the kitchen, you're preparing food. In those cases, you need really good task lighting. And task lighting does not have to be ugly. It used to be just that big, ugly, rectangular fluorescent fixture that people would mount under a shelf or on the ceiling. Lighting has come a long way. So if you think of, your kitchen countertops or other areas where specific lighting is going to be needed, this is where you can get into really cool floor lamps, a really cool tabletop lamp, desk lamp, track lighting, which is mounted. There's great track lighting out there now for ceilings. It doesn't have to be that kind of tacky 70s look that I grew up with. But yeah, when you realize that you really could use some good task lighting, again, just think of office desks, kitchen counters, kitchen islands, garage workstations mounted under the cabinetry in a kitchen or in a bathroom even. Think of bathroom vanities or a nightstand if you're one that does a lot of reading before bed, or, you just need some good nightstand lighting there. These are all good reasons to really shop around for some cool task lighting, and there are some awesome options out there. So let's go ahead and move on from task lighting to accent lighting. Accent lighting is a little bit different because this is where you can highlight a certain object in a room. Or if you think of like spotlights, maybe there's that cool piece of art on the wall or just a cool sculpture piece in your room. Spotlighting is really cool because it's just going to light up that particular item. It is usually a lot brighter than what an ambient fixture is going to provide, and it gives you that obvious focus because you're highlighting a particular thing. But yeah, when you want to accentuate a specific object, again, architectural features, this is where accent lighting is really cool. If you've just got a really cool architectural style to your house, or there's just something particular to your space, you've got an alcove in there, other decorative items, maybe something simply placed on a shelf or whatever, you can position accent lighting or a really cool little spotlight to show that. This is where you can also draw special attention to things like a fireplace, or you can use spotlighting to really showcase a really cool grouping of plants, maybe that's in your tropical space. So, yeah, think of accent lighting to really show off some cool pieces, to really have the eye drawn to an area where you want that focus to go. And fixtures that fall into this category typically involve directional recessed lighting. These are where you can point them in a particular direction and they will just shine in one place. For track lighting, you can also get these with mounted spotlights where you can point them in a direction or two, or however many that you have. The one thing we would suggest, though, when it comes to accent lighting is less is more, because now you're bringing focus to a particular place. How many places like that do you want in your space? If you start using too many spotlights and too much accent lighting, you are going to turn your room into something that looks like it's out of a museum or an art gallery. So be careful with accent lighting. We suggest going sparingly with it, And in this case, less is definitely more. So, having covered that, let's get into choosing the best lighting and fixtures. And to choose the best fixtures for your space, there's a couple things you do need to consider here. One of them is the function or purpose. Think of how these specific fixtures are going to be used. And depending on the use, that's going to determine what kind of fixture to get and what kind of bulb should be in there. Are you going to have one continuous level of brightness? Do you want to have something that's dimmable? We love dimmer switches, and we highly recommend using dimmers wherever you can because that just creates a whole new level of illumination. You can go brighter when you want, obviously, and just really, really dial it back when you want something that's quiet and intimate and relaxing. So think about the function or the purpose of your space, and then the function or the purpose of the fixtures itself. So it does make a difference. You want to be sure that you get the right light for what it is you want to do. Then consider the room size and the space as well. You need to consider the whole size of the room because you want to make sure that the fixture itself is going to be in good proportion with it. Are you just focusing on a specific corner? Maybe it's a desk or a tabletop. Maybe you are looking for a fixture that lights up the whole room. So, what we recommend you do is measure the size of your ceiling space and then compare it to the size of the fixture. Then, what you should do is compare the size of your largest furnishings. Just see how it makes you feel. You're going to know if something is off. If a particular fixture just looks too small, or maybe even with the brightest bulb, it just doesn't work. You want to make sure that whatever bulbs you're using is appropriate for the fixture size too. I mean, if you can imagine a tiny little desktop or yeah, like a little tabletop lamp that's shining as bright as the sun over there, that's going to look a little strange. Or if you've just got this really nice floor lamp and it's got maybe a 25-watt bulb in it, that's not going to work really well either. So you just want to make sure that the sizes of your fixtures work in relation to the size of the room and the furnishings that are in it. Everything should be proportional. And then that is also going to help determine what kind of bulbs. And we're going to get into that in a second because that's super important. But you're going to know what kind of bulbs in there, how bright or how dim should things be. So, speaking of bulbs, this is probably going to be one of the most important parts of this episode today, is called color temperature. And this is super important. And I wish more people would pay attention to it. I really, really do. I can't tell you how many homes I've been in, whether it was back in the day when I was a realtor or even going over to family and friends or wherever. I've been in a lot of homes where a lot of people have done amazing jobs with interior design, interior decorating. Everything just looks awesome and the lighting is all off. It's like I just walk in going, no, why are you using this kind of lighting? And it just washes everything out, or it just completely deflates the look of what they have. So, color temperature, super, super important. These are the things you need to ask yourself. What mood are you trying to create in the room? What is the atmosphere that you're trying to achieve? That's going to dictate your color temperature and what you need to get. So you have to select color temperature based on the intended purpose of the fixtures. And here we're going to get into some quick definitions so you know what I'm talking about for anyone who might not know. When you are looking at wattage, that's probably the most common thing that people know about. Wattage simply measures the amount of electrical power that is consumed by a light bulb, to be technical about it. Wattage indicates energy consumption. So that's really easy to wrap your head around. The higher wattage the bulb, the brighter it's going to be. But that's not everything you need to look at, because you can have a really brightly lit bulb. What color is it? The color itself is going to be a really important factor here. So after wattage, what you want to look at is the lumens, and the lumens will be identified somewhere on the packaging. Lumens measure the amount of visible light that's emitted by the light bulb. These indicate the level of brightness. So you don't rely solely on wattage for brightness. You also need to know the lumens. because lumens are tied to the third term here, which we will define, and this is kelvins. So kelvins measure the color temperature or the warmth or coolness of the light. So kelvins indicate the perceived color. So you've got your wattage, you've got your lumens, and your kelvins. And it's important to balance all three together. And it's not as hard as you think. And in the blog post that I mentioned, we've got some great detail on this. So I highly recommend reading that. But here's an example. While the lumens are focusing on the quantity of light, kelvins focus on the quality of it. They focus on the color quality or the hue. If you can imagine a high lumen, low Kelvin bulb, this is something like maybe 800 lumens and 2700 Kelvin. This would be very, very bright and it would have a warm yellowish light to it. While a low lumen and a high Kelvin bulb, this is where you've got 400 lumens and maybe 5000 Kelvin. It's going to be dimmer because the lumens are lower, but it's going to emit a cool bluish, kind of whitish light because the kelvins are higher. So again, we've got great imagery on our blog post about this. I know it's hard to visualize this over a podcast, but if you take a look at the blog post, it'll totally make sense. So to kind of sum that up, what you want to do is choose cooler lighting for performing tasks and warmer lightings for relaxation. You want to be careful though, because when you're using cooler lights, you don't want to go too cold. Cold lighting is that office feeling. That's what I call it. It's that sterile, white, office-like feel that too many people are using in their homes in the quest to be energy efficient. And surprisingly, they're not as energy efficient as most people think they are. But it's that office-like feeling when you are in a room, when people are using these for ambient or general lighting, it just doesn't work in tropical scenery. It just doesn't work. Tropical scenes need some level of warmth in the light. So we really recommend keeping that cold office-like feel for task lighting. It works great when you are doing something on a tabletop that you're focusing on, like crafting or just something like that. Great for task lighting. For those of you who are more familiar with the common descriptions, soft white versus warm white, that's what that's about there. A soft white is going to be around 3000 K or 3000 kelvins, while a warm white is going to be lower at about 2700. So if you see 2700 K, that's your kind of standard warm white. Warm whites are fine for tropical escapes. It's almost like the warmer, the better. And if you really want to bring in that kind of vintage, antique, yellowy, warm look and have the bulbs themselves be something really, really cool to look at, check out those vintage bulbs, or they're called Edison bulbs. They used to come in one kind of standard elongated shape, but now there's all kinds of them available. We've got links to some of these in our blog post because we are an Amazon partner. We do make a small commission on things that you do click on, and this is at no cost to you, so just know that. But we really do recommend, if you like that vintage look, and the filaments inside are in a really cool design typically. They're almost a piece of art in and of themselves. So yeah, if you like that kind of vintagey, antique-y, warm glow, check out those Edison bulbs. But speaking of those, just a quick note, we absolutely love them, but it's way too easy to use too many of them. So be careful. We love things with a lot of visual interest, but like anything else, too much of those isn't good either. Too much of anything isn't a good thing. Your lighting needs to be balanced throughout your entire space. This is where you can use a combination of warm lighting and cool lighting. You can throw in those vintage bulbs maybe for a little bit of an accent piece. So moving on from color temperature, we also think layered lighting is a cool thing to consider. This is where you have different types of light sources, as I just mentioned, in one room to ensure that there's a lot of visual interest. It does really provide a great amount of depth and contrast because too much of one lighting, of any kind of lighting, is going to appear flat. It's not going to appear interesting. And then when you get into the fixtures themselves, you really want to make sure that those are complementing your chosen decor style. I mean, trust us on this, really. You can find some really, really good tropical inspired table lamps and floor lamps and ceiling fans and things like that. And it really does work. The one thing I would put a bit of caution on is when you get into mounted light fixtures, like the ones that are mounted on the ceiling or wall mounted ones like sconces. When you want to kind of go eclectic, be careful because those ones, they just stand out more visually because they're on the wall. It's on the ceiling. So you don't want it to look out of place. Whatever you choose, you want it to fit the theme or the style of the decor that you're going for. So that's just our little tip when it comes to mounted fixtures. Be very, very careful about trying to go eclectic with that because it'll look out of place if you're not careful. So now that we've got those basics covered, what you want to do also, just a quick tip, is when it comes to your color temperature of your lighting, you just want to make sure that it balances with the color choices on your walls and in all of your upholstery and all of this. So, at a very basic level, just know that any paints and wallpapers and upholsteries and all of this that are done in yellows and oranges and reds and browns, those are your warmer colors. You get into your blues and your greens and your whites, those are your cooler ones. So, just to give you a really cool little example here that should be very easy to imagine, is you have a room that's done in turquoises and aquas and greens, and you've really used the ocean as a source of inspiration. That has a very cooling effect mentally, all of those colors. So when you go ahead and pair it with some warmer lighting, you have an awesome, wonderful balance of color, wonderful balance of lighting. If you think of a day where you're out by the pool or you're out at the beach and you have the sun provides a lot of warmer color. So it is that yellowy, orangey look, depending on the clouds that might be out in the day. If you are getting close to a sunset and you have those spectacular sunsets, typically those are going to be in the warmer color of things. So you can create a touch of that in your room by having a very, very cool color palette and using warmer lighting. Or on the opposite side of that, you can go with warmer colors and tone it down with some cooler lighting too. Because if you are really into the reds and the oranges and the browns, visually that's very warm. So you have to be careful now if you're going to add a lot of warmer lighting on top of it. It can almost create a bit of a stifling feel to it. So going into those cooler, more white toned lights actually works very, very well. You can tone it down. Again, just don't go too strong with those cooler ones because tropical spaces can't handle that. So, having covered that, let's take a quick look at fixtures themselves. I know we touched on that briefly, but just know that for some people, adding a simple seashell lamp is enough to take them to their imaginary happy place. Most people, however, are going to want a little bit more than that. So when you are looking at your colors and you've got your furnishings and decor and artwork and all of this going on, consider your light fixtures as well. What is sitting on that tabletop? What are you using for a floor lamp? These are pieces where you can use the sand on the beach as inspiration. Again, pieces of coral, beautifully polished woods, really cool bleached wood, even driftwood, tropical plant motifs. So fixtures themselves come in a lot of different textured surfaces. They come in a lot of different shapes. As I mentioned, the ceiling fan earlier with the palm fronds, those really help to bring in the tropics. So regardless of which way you're going with your warmer colors and cooler colors and the different decor that you've got in there, just know that light fixtures too can help transport you to your happy place. Maybe you saw something cool when you were on vacation or visiting somewhere one day. And hopefully, if you do a bit of research online, you can find that. But yeah, this is one reason why we suggest when people do travel, it's really easy to jump into vacation mode and head straight to that bar out by the pool and grab a cocktail, which is fine. That's what we do. But just take note. Pay attention when you're in your hotel room, when you're in the hotel lobby, when you're out at the bar, wherever you are on the resort property, look at the details. What are they using for decor? What are they using for color? How are they creating this awesome look? So you want your fixtures to fit into that as well. Let's go ahead and keep moving on here. We have a quick note for you about chandeliers and pendants. So there is a difference between the two, and it is important because when you are looking at the size of the fixture, there can be some confusion between the two. Technically, chandeliers are a pendant because it hangs from the ceiling, just like pendant lighting, but chandeliers are typically a lot bigger. By definition, a chandelier is a multi light fixture. So that's what makes them bigger. They tend to be more ornate. As I said, they are hung from ceilings. And a lot of times, depending on the size, they just require a higher than average ceiling because of their sheer size and scale. Not all chandeliers need to be like super fancy with those boxes and boxes of crystals that were applied on them. I used to work for a lighting company in LA and I helped with some installation of some of these things. And you get up into the Hollywood Hills or, those hills above Glendale and Burbank, and people are ordering these massive pieces with boxes and boxes of different crystals where you literally have maps to point you in the right direction about where to start. And it was just super fun when they would hang these over a curving staircase. And then I had to get on there with a coworker on those funky ladders that you can use and you feel like you're 50 feet in the air. But anyways, I digress. Chandeliers can be huge, but they don't have to be. There are mini chandeliers available, which are very, very good for more common ceiling heights. They're not as ornate. You can use these in spaces over dining room tables. They work in entryways as well. So, because they do tend to be on the more ornate side, you do want to consider where you're going to use it. If your tropical space is just going to be more on the casual side and more relaxed, you don't want to be putting a big fancy ornate fixture there. That's again going to look out of place, which is what we don't want. That is something that we would probably keep more for the dining rooms, or if you do have kind of a fancy entryway, that's fine too. But for most tropical spaces, you can look at smaller versions of chandeliers. Some of them will have only a few branches, maybe only holding a few lights. That'll work. You don't want something that's really over the top. When you are looking at pendants, these are different because they are typically a single light. So you're not going to have multiple bulbs placed within this fixture. Pendant lights are also used over dining room tables, kitchen islands. They're used over countertops. They can be used over freestanding bars or built-in bars, but they're smaller. These work in smaller dining rooms, maybe smaller kitchen spaces. You can use these in a corner of a room, perhaps, if you want something hanging from the ceiling for that kind of visual interest. They do provide some depth and really unique lighting patterns on the walls, and pendant lighting is really, really cool. There are a lot of awesome ones out there, so that just takes getting online and shopping around. But they tend to be more simple in design. They're not as dramatic. They're not big or grand, but they're really, really cool as statement pieces. So I just wanted to make that quick note about the difference between chandeliers and pendants. Big difference between the two. But just a few examples of different lighting fixtures that you can get. We mentioned earlier table lamps. There's just tropical table lamps, something maybe with a really cool bamboo shade on it, or the base itself is made out of some rattan or maybe some driftwood, but it puts out a really, really cool light. If you've got a great shade on there, it's going to cast those really cool wall shadows. Those are so versatile and you can use them in so many different spaces. So yeah, tropical table lamps. If you happen to be doing your bathrooms many times do have at least a single ambient light fixture overhead. If they don't, they usually have very bright task lighting, which is important because that's the bathroom. That's where the daily hygiene happens and the beauty regimens and all of that. But it doesn't have to be boring. There's all kind of really cool task lighting that can be mounted above the mirrors. You can also brighten up the space just with other kind of lighting that can be mounted on the wall in addition to. I think one cool thing that people are doing these days are getting mirrors that are mounted on the wall and they're backlit with a type of lighting, or I'm not sure if it's an LED lighting, but they're just backlit. And those are really cool too. Yeah, consider other lighting options for your bathroom. It doesn't have to be just ceiling mounted lights or lights over the mirror. There are other ways to incorporate really, really cool lighting in the bathroom. And depending on the size and the amount of counter space that you have and the accessibility to an outlet, consider little tabletop ones in there, something that's really, really cool, a nice statement piece for a corner. So, yeah, bathroom task lighting, very important. A third one to consider is an actual dining room chandelier for people who tend to think that these are just too fancy or ornate for their particular home. Give them another look. There's some really, really cool chandeliers available online. Just because it's called a chandelier, again, doesn't mean it has to be fancy. It just refers to the number of bulbs that a particular fixture might have. You can get something as simple as a leaf shaped structure that maybe has six candelabra bulbs. That, by definition, is a chandelier. And it just adds a lot of tropical atmosphere. And you don't need a mansion or a palace. It'll fit over any standard dining room table or maybe a little breakfast space. So, yeah, just don't discount chandeliers. I have many friends that are like, I would never have one. They imagine those big, huge giant crystally looking things over a grand piano, and that is not the case. So lots of cool chandeliers out there. With the pendants, just again to mention those come in a lot of organic looks. You can get a lot of vibrant personality. The shades are endless from A to Z, and from rectangles to ovals to just fluted kind of tulip looking ones, the way the glass is blown. There's just an endless option of pendants. You can use one by itself. You can get two or three. We recommend putting them, if you're going to put like a row of them or use a grouping, odd numbers just, in our opinion, tend to work better. But you can use three of the same, or you could get three different ones if you really want to mix it up. Pendant lighting is really, really cool. So check that out. If you're working in the bedroom, just consider a bedside wall lamp. These are lamps that can be mounted to the wall, or it's a tabletop freestanding lamp, but don't discount lighting for the bedroom. You can really, really find some cool tropical pieces that work great on nightstands or that are mounted just kind of as a side reading light. Lots of really, really cool styles out there. I think the last type of lighting that I'll mention here is when you get into tiki bar lighting. Obviously, tiki bars are very popular, both indoors and outdoors, and we'll get into some of the outdoor ones next week. But consider tiki bar lightings, even whether you have an actual bar or not. What you can bring in with that is a true tropical feel. When you start to get into lighting that's made out of tapa cloth, which is that pounded mulberry bark paper, which is very common in the South Pacific. If you look up tapa cloth lighting online, you'll see what I mean in there. It might refer you to places where you can source maybe some other tiki pieces as well, because it is very popular in the tiki culture. But that's an option. Maybe just considering something like those glass float lights or string lights. Those are very common in tiki bar settings. If you're going to get into those pufferfish that are lit up, that's fine too. Just know that that's very tiki. It's definitely going to be a statement piece if you don't have anything else going on like that in your room. People are going to go, oh, wow, it's a pufferfish that's lit up. Whereas when you have a full on tiki bar, it just kind of fits in and it speaks for itself. But yeah, just look at different tiki bar lighting options. We mentioned that one Facebook group, if you happen to be on Facebook, called Theming Tiki Bars. Again, great examples with lighting in there, because that's half of what a tiki bar is the lighting. So we highly recommend taking a look at that, because even if you don't use any specific tiki pieces, it could give you that inspiration. It could maybe flag something in your mind if you're in a particular store or you're online and you see a really cool piece, and you can say, hey, that looks really cool. That looks like something that I saw, on that tiki page or whatever, and it would work. Definitely don't pass it up. So yeah, there's just a really, really wide range of lighting that you can use out there to create your tropical escape inside. And I think, it just shows that you can really illuminate spaces in ways that go beyond just regular old general lighting. I mean, general lighting is necessary, it's very functional, but it does not have to be the sole source of illumination. So we really recommend spend some time on the details. What is it that's in your head, and try to create that. And with lighting, you can create so many different looks. Small corners with specific furnishings are perfect spots for little displays that you can create, or vignettes, as some people call them. Specialized lighting creates really wonderful shadowing on the wall. You can really get into the accent lighting to highlight certain spaces, as we talked about. Larger accent lighting can come from fixtures such as pendants. Uplights, these are usually placed out of sight because the uplight fixture itself is not that interesting to look at, but these can be placed on the floor or behind something on a desk, maybe, or even behind something on a shelf. The goal with uplighting is to have the light shoot up underneath something and highlight that piece. If it's done with a cool tropical plant, you're going to have this beautiful imagery of shadows across the space, but it's the light that's produced, not the fixture itself, that you're interested in. So yeah, consider uplighting as well. When you get into overhead lighting, if that's where you really want to focus on, get some string lights, get some outdoor bistro lights and use those indoors. Very, very cool. They create such a fun party atmosphere, obviously perfect for indoor tiki bars. So, yeah, I think there you have it. Lighting is fun. It is an essential need for everyday living, but I think it is a very overlooked area when it comes into design, unless you're going to hire a pro to get into interior design or interior decorating. They're really going to know their stuff about lighting. So if that's what you want to do, I think you can consider lighting handled because they're going to have the expertise. But for the everyday person who just wants to do something really cool at home, and it's just not something you've ever really thought about. I mean, you've shopped for light fixtures for your house because you need light in a particular place. Consider it as a decorative thing too. Lighting is amazing. And when it comes to creating tropical spaces, it is just as important as your color choices, just as important as your artwork and decor. It will set the mood. It'll create that atmosphere that you want. So yeah, consider it very carefully and don't hold back. The one cool thing about lighting is it's typically not super expensive. So yeah, just use it and make that tropical escape come to life. That we highly recommend it. Go have fun with it. As I mentioned, next week we're going to cover outdoor lighting in part 2 because there is a lot to that as well. Again, it's a very overlooked area, but we think there are some important notes to highlight there. And again, we will have the link to our lighting blog post in the show notes for today. So one thing I want to mention here is that lighting is only one part of creating your tropical escape. There's so many other things you can learn about. So we highly encourage you to check out the rest of our podcasts. Visit us online at ceruleanbay.com. We've got our other blog posts there. We have our little online store, which has some really cool decor pieces in there. And in the meantime, until we meet up again, just have an awesome week. Get creative, get inspired, and just get out there and look around and pay attention to the details. You're going to come up with some pretty cool ideas of how to create your own tropical escape at home. So have a great one. We really thank you for tuning in today, and we're going to leave it there for now. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.